you ain't got my money or my buzz, I'm killing you and me.
The number you have 911 has been changed to a non-public.
Hello guys, this is me, Carlo Jumlaya, and yeah, I mean, this is out of nowhere, so ewan ko lang bakit. Meron lang akong ina-experiment na kahit ano, holy cow, I mean, what is that? So yeah. Ngik! Well, you know what they say, the glitch is always glitching. Ewan ko na kung bakit nakalagay yung pangalan. Wait, ano? Wait. Oh, okay. That's enough. Glitch aside, I mean, pag-usapan na lang natin why I prefer 64-bit PC or computer other than 32 bits. I mean, ako na lang, simple, tama ba? I mean, ako na lang kung bakit. Hirap lang talaga, pero mas easy lang naman yun. Siguro sabihin na lang natin medyo more of a things na so without further ado, go to the chat to the version na gusto ko. Sila. So nahanda ko pa yung yung sa I don't know, medyo like okay. Yan. I mean, why is literally memeing yun? Like, okay. You know, this is obviously scap. The most scap thingy. May compared sa isang aso na Ewan ko na lang kung bakit. Siguro na isa-search ko na lang sa ibabasa ko kung bakit. Okay, medyo with a match part. Okay, this is obviously stupid kung bakit. So, yeah, I gonna, use window capture. Nakita na ba yung screen ko? Yep. So, ano bang rason? Yes, the most obvious thing kung bakit prefer ko yung 32 bits over 64 bits is why 2038. Yes. Year 2038 problem. I mean, guys, kung naalala niyo ba yung yung Y2K na like sinasabi nilang scam pero actually it's obviously more than that eh. It's year 2000 eh, like basahin na lang natin. The year 2000 problem also commonly sa Y2K problem millennium bug glitch. Putang na. Glitch? Seriously? Okay. Lahat nag-interconnect. Sabihin na lang natin Y2K. Refers to potential computer errors to the formatted storage of the calendar, blah, 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 after the year 2000. I mean, if you know, kung ano i-describe ka about Y2K, kapag umabot na sa I think, ito yung itsura eh. Imbis na year 2000s, it's January 1990s. Well, sabihin na lang natin is incorrect. Siguro ipapanoorin ko sa inyo kung what the frick is Y2K and Pero muna like, yes, why 2038 is just a time formatting bug. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna joke about like, oh no, glitchy Carlo or Carlo is glitching anyone, include. No. Although it's just one of those jokes na pero in reality about sa Y 2038 is a true bagay. And I think medyo may reason talaga kung bakit lumipat na tayo from 32-bit to 64-bit. I mean, I think yung pangalawa is the memory. Okay. Siguro, sabihin na lang natin is, why is that? Dito sa na ito. So, a 32-bit, it can ideally access about 232 memory addresses. Is it equal to 4 gigabytes of physical memory of RAM? It can access more than 4 gigabytes, but not very efficiently. So, ang mabibigay kong example sa 32-bit systems, as far as I know, siguro yung mga, lumang systems na sabihin na lang natin is Windows 95 or something. I mean, Windows XP, pati Windows 7, Windows 8, I think hanggang Windows 10. So, yeah. Anything na 32-bit na OS is up to 4 gigabytes. Pero ang alam ko lang sa Windows XP hanggang 3 gigabytes yun. Pero hence why hanggang 4 gigabytes yun talaga eh. So ito, 64-bit, it can ideally access about 264 memory addresses. Is it equal to 80 quintillion bytes of physical memory of RAM? In short, you can handle holy cow. I mean, that's big. I mean, malaki naman talaga kasi, well, and sa panahon ngayon, lalo na yung mga Google Chromes and shit, like, ito na ba, oh my God, like, ito pa naman eh, madaling kumakain ng memory. Mas madali pang kumain sa, okay. This is obviously, medyo not good speech. Pero, you get the point about, those programs. Not to mention yung mga games na, kailangan naka 8 gig, kailangan naka 16 gig, 32 gig, 64 gig. Yes, so this is why I preferred 64-bit over 32 na. Okay, so Carlo, you're talking about like yung mga games and stuff. I mean, common sense na kailangan mo talaga ng 64-bit. I mean, 32-bit seems fine. Why is that? Bukod pa sa 4 gigabytes, na which is no biggies. And of course, hindi kasama yung mga retro gaming PC na which is I'm not advising you na to ditch those retro gaming PCs. Like, come on, dude. You know kung pagkano yung mga retro gaming PC na yon, like a fuck ton of pesos. Like, I would advise not to ditch those retro gaming PCs because of this stupid advice galing from me. Like, come on. Pero bukod pa dun sa sabi ko yung retro gaming PCs, how about yung mga normal na users? 4 gigabytes, yung Google Chrome, and of course, this one, which is, it's obviously a big deal. And this is why walang PC except lang sa retro gaming PC na, magagamit na, na, yes, that's literally the reason. Ewan ko na lang kung bakit. Lang talaga na, mga kasi yung, oh my God, like, we actually, I mean, okay. I think this is obviously the deja vu of, sasabihin na naman yung mga conspiracy theory na natapos na naman yung mundo. I mean, although, naman ako, like, Catholic ako at this point. I mean, like, bruh, it's just a fucking computer. You can actually fix it just by upgrading. I know, sasabihin na naman na gagastos na naman tayo ng I mean, eto reminder lang ako, naka 64-bit lang yung PC and as long as either naka Windows, which is 64-bit or Linux, doesn't even matter. As long as 64-bit yung OS, you're actually good to go and use the PC whatever you want. Like, yeah. Yeah. Pero kapag naka 32-bit with exception to retro gaming PC and as long as nakakonektas na sa internet, just go and buy some 64-bit computers, you cheapskate. I know, I'm a cheapskate too, pero hindi mo kailangan na hindi mo kailangan ng mga Ryzen shit. No, wait, you don't need that. Ang kailangan mo lang is 64-bit na processor. Kahit luma pang 64-bit na processor, gagana yun. Like, can you see the, okay, medyo not convinced kung bakit. I don't know, medyo sometimes I'm being dominated with this, like, how about, our rating from, I think, okay, para madali lang ito, like, kasi, it's, yun How about a Videobram Tech Wiki? I mean, I know, yes, Linus Sebastian, pero
If you're old enough,
sabihin ko na lang about yun later on, but for now, we're just gonna talk about it.
If you're old enough, you probably remember all the doomsdaying there was around the Y2K problem. And if you aren't old enough, well, lots of people were concerned in the late 1990s that once January 1st, 2000 arrived, computers would think the year was 1900 instead of 2000, causing a huge number of unforeseen problems because computers are stupid.
Yep. I mean,
well, the year 2000 got here and not much of anything happened. I mean, some taxi meters glitched out, but there weren't apocalyptic consequences.
get it? Glitch out? Oh my God, no, hindi ko kasalanan yun. I'm just turning it to ito. Oh my God.
But wait! Even though 2000 was a nothing burger, there have been other date-related shenanigans that have happened since then, and there might be more in the future. So let's start out by talking about a software bug that hit in 2010, which kept millions of people from accessing their own hard-earned money. Over in Germany, roughly 30 million bank cards simply stopped working in January 2010.
Get it?
Some customers couldn't withdraw any euros, while others had their cards simply eaten by ATMs.
Oh my God.
The issue was that the microchip inside the card simply couldn't comprehend that the year was 2010. What?
What?
Replacing the cards would have cost nearly $500 million, though fortunately, a software patch was issued instead. Now, another issue with more global consequences popped up in 2019, which affected the global positioning system, better known as
the
GPS.
GPS.
You see, GPS keeps track of which week it is, using a counter that only goes up to 1023. This is because the counter only has 10 binary digits, meaning weeks are marked starting with 0 and ending with 1023. Now, 1023 weeks is a little under 20 years, so each time the counter maxes out and resets to 0, there's the potential for anything that relies on GPS time to experience issues. That happened in 2019. Flights were delayed or canceled as a result, and older cell phones and consumer GPS trackers also dealt with loss of location data. Fortunately, this is an issue that can typically be solved with software fixes.
Yep,
but the
it's
problem
true.
is going to rear its ugly head once again in 2038. And I'd be willing to bet there's going to be some kind of issue because someone forgot to issue a patch. Just patch it up, it's easy. I think it's hard. And if 2038 sounds familiar, that's because you're probably thinking about the Unix time problem, which works similarly to the GPS bug. Originally, systems based on the Unix kernel, including macOS and anything that runs Linux, used 32 bits to keep track of how many seconds had passed since January 1st, 1970. If you do the math, the counter maxes out in January of 2038, and unlike the GPS problem we mentioned, it's not straightforward to fix it with a software update, as changing the way the counter works could break a large number of programs. Although it seems like this could be catastrophic when you think of how many servers and embedded devices use Linux, the good news is that many systems based on Unix have since been updated to 64-bit, including older Linux systems. And using a 64-bit time counter means it wouldn't roll over for another 292 billion years. I'm hoping by then we'll have figured out a way to write software smart enough to always know what time it is, but
Okay, medyo...
means
What?
it wouldn't roll over for another 292 billion. Unix have since been updated to 64.
Mhm. 8038 is for Linux, what UI2K was for... But the fixes are the way to which sure. Well, that's actually a good news. I mean, I can actually... Pero for the same time, you can actually use 32 bits. Even it's end of 2038. Pero hey, at least that's great. Nice. Pero I think I would prefer 64-bit, not because of 238 BS, but also yung memories and some stuff. And kumakain talaga ng, kasalanan ng mga, alam mo na, ibig ko sabihin.
4-bit, including older Linux systems. And using a 64-bit time counter means it wouldn't roll over for another 292 billion years. I'm hoping by then we'll have figured out a way to write software smart enough to always know what time it is, but human beings, you never know. Finally, let's end the video on a lighter note. We've been used to using 4-digit years since the Battle of Hastings in 1066, but what's going to happen once we hit the year 10,000 AD? We got used to the idea of computers needing to use 4 digits for the year when the original Y2K problem was first pondered, but in about 8,000 years, we might run into the same issue again, only this time, we'll need 5 digits instead of 4. Although we have nearly 8 millennia to figure it out, Y10K is already an issue for researchers, as astronomical calculations often have to be done on very long timescales. So here's hoping that Y10K doesn't cause us to miss an incoming meteor, as Bruce Willis probably won't be around to save us. But who knows? What I do know is that this video...
Okay, that's the meme. Pero anyway, Y10K. Am I sensing the Look, I'm a BitTube hybrid streamer, meaning I can do BitTubing and of course pero you know what's the I don't, look, I'm sorry I dapat doom posting pero di tayo maaabutan dyan sa na yun and by the time na it's Well, if you know, you know. Hmm, yeah. Sorry. So, ano bang ano, ano ba yun? Like, my God. I mean, okay, so, how about Y2K? Yeah, so, mas magandang pag-usapan kasi lahat lang yun nag-i-interconnects. Putang ina, para akong si Paulo. Ay, ito, how about this video?
We're using way too many platforms for work. You should just use
Ads.
Monday.com.
We're not using that many.
Yan. I would rather glitch the freak out of it rather
The
than
year
see the...
2000 was going to be very special for a multitude of reasons.
Mhm.
We were entering into a new millennium, a new era, a year that only existed in science fiction stories. This was by no means a conventional new year. It was finally the future. But maybe not the future everyone was anticipating. Millions of people around the world spent their last moments in the 1900s staring at the clock, but not for the reason that you might think. Instead of celebrating, they were terrified, because as soon as the clock struck midnight, the world was going to end, and within the blink of an eye, the year 2000 would instead be a future now past. Word had been going around about this upcoming event for years now. The public even coined a name for this phenomenon, Y2K. And as the late
Yeah,
1990s creeped up and the year
true.
2000 approached, people crowded up stores across the world
Yeah, oo
and
nga
lined
eh. I
up to buy
mean,
food,
gusto
water,
pag-usapan
weapons,
about,
and supplies to
no?
create
Ano
survival
pang
kits.
ginagawa?
Because on this date,
Y2K?
according to many credible sources, computers would malfunction, prison gates would open, dams would flood, banks would lose all their money, nuclear missiles would launch by themselves. They did this because they were told the end was near. But
Inwash ni
why?
Ramputek.
What exactly
Yeah.
caused such a strange
nangyari?
worldwide panic like this one
Ang
to
nangyari lang
arise?
talaga, ano
If the
eh.
year 2000 was
I mean, pag-meet rin lang na yun. Even though, ano, alam ko ano nangyari? Gusto mo bang masabi ko? Awan ko na lang. Siguro Y2K, I mean, yung with some kind of, I don't know. Tapos, ayaw na magsabi. It's like saying, talking about birds in the bees for a moment, pero if you know, you know. Like, let's just say, ano, that one Carlo na may palbas, tapos yung tulad ni, and this is getting fucking perverted, right? Bakit pa ako nag-off topic?
so dangerous,
So
how
I
are
talking
we
about it, talking
still
about-
here? To fully understand the curious story behind Y2K and how
Aha.
it was able to cause such the level of panic that it did, we first need to discuss what exactly all of it means. To be clear, world-ending predictions were by no means a new thing. But no, this was something different. Y2K wasn't just some Armageddon story made up by conspiracy theorists. This
Yeah,
was
oo.
actually something that might have validity to it, and many people at the time took note of this and prepared for the worst. And that's exactly what made Y2K such a crazy story. In fact, there were three big things going on in the 20th century, and especially the 90s, that were responsible for the Y2K scare. The exponential growth of technology, the ambiguity and mystique that was present behind
yes.
the brand new personal computer, and the overwhelming access of information that the world saw.
Ito ang masasabi ko kasi we treat the culture like sa US or sa PH. I mean, talking about like The globalization is literally the real deal, pero I would never say that because baka ma-plug ako na. Alam mo na ibig ko sabihin. Like, yes, I mean, okay, security cameras are obviously this advancing. Yung mga ano, gumagamit na sila ng smartphones, anything. Not to mention, nasa screen nyo in 21:9 na isang glitch sabi na ano, talking about shit or something. I don't know. Or unless kung doon ka sa side ni Yuki, then ano, you just watching recent Super Mario RPG tapos yung always on up. I mean, kung gusto nyo, sige, doon kayo sa, ano, sa Twitch ni Yuki, that's fine. But anyway, I mean, kung ano, you can actually stay. I mean, this one is actually talking about, bakit?
At the end of the century. And these factors also tie into the origins of the Y2K story. So what exactly was the story? How did Y2K work? The answer to this question actually goes farther back than you might think. The first known mention of Y2K as a legitimate issue goes back to 1958, discovered by an IBM employee, Bob Bemer, who was also a renowned computer scientist at the time. He proposed this idea of a 2000 bug during a time where computers were still brand new, a lavish and costly byproduct of World War II. But with time, these machines could become incredibly sophisticated and part of our everyday lives, and he recognized this. In 1958, memory was extremely expensive, and naturally, to save money while maximizing efficiency, they removed what they thought was redundant information. And that's what Y2K was centered on. It all had to do with how numbers were presented on a clock. That's where the term Y2K comes from, abbreviating year 2000. You see, computers at the time only took the last 2 digits of a year into account when calculating the date, as having the 19 at the beginning of each set of digits just used up more memory than was worth. The last 2 digits were more than fine. It is not like people were looking at these computers to see what year it was anyway. It was used for logging and record keeping, and the last 2 digits were plenty for that. There were even some computers that only used 1 digit to represent the year, so instead of 1978, you just had 8. I mean, everyone knew it was still the 20th century. But what would happen as we approached the 21st century? Well, naturally, the year 2000 would have to be represented as 00. But how would a computer that only stores the last 2 digits of a year react to that? Would it read it as 100? Or would it backtrack and read it as 0, and slowly tick back up as the years progress? Is the year 2001 or 1901? Now, at face value, this probably seems like a mixed bag in terms of severity. There were those that saw this as just people overthinking how a computer operates.
If they're making too much out of it, it's not going to be anything. Just another day. Of course, I may be wrong.
While others saw just how serious the implications of this could be.
I don't think you have enough time, because as the year goes on, supplies could be less and less.
Keep in mind, even at the time, computers just don't store dates and times to be organized and keep records. They also use these dates and times to make important calculations with data. The bank is a great example of this. There were fears that on Y2K, all the money in the banks would be gone. And there's a valid reason to think this, and it all has to do with computer error. It's not like on January 1st the money would just disappear from all the safes, but instead the bank servers and computers would calculate the money's interest based on the time and date. If the computers were to clock back to 0,
check this out. Want a quick and easy way to make tons of pro-looking videos all by yourself?
the interest would likely be all over the place. That's what people feared, and that actually was the case. On January 1st, 2000, a man in Germany very briefly had $6 million in his bank account, with the transaction for the interest on his account dating to December 30th, 1899. The bank was calculating all the interest that had compounded since that date. Now that was just one bank that didn't update their software on time. Imagine this on a global scale. People see their new account balance, they scream a couple of eurekas, and now thousands of people are withdrawing huge amounts of money at the bank. Or maybe you have the opposite problem. A bank transaction is read as being dated 1999, and the computer panics because it thinks it's 1900, and calculates the interest backwards. Now people's accounts are in overdraft, they panic sell all their assets, they take out loans, and now the banks are again empty that way. This is actually very similar to what happened with the stock market crash in 1929, but instead it's with computer bugs. Not only that, in Japan, nuclear energy plants actually had several alarms start to go off a couple minutes after midnight due to this bug. What if the same were to happen with missiles and create false alarms of a potential nuclear attack? Now you probably see where the problem lies, and naturally why people panicked, and banks and nuclear missiles were only part of it. All these issues created by the bug would make the everyday necessities and privileges of society to malfunction or even cease to exist, which would lead to anarchy and before you know it, full-out civil war. Y2K would be the quick domino effect for the end of the world. But let's go back a bit and see what our options are, because luckily Y2K can be stopped, but it's going to take a lot of work and be very expensive. This is exactly what people in the late 90s were thinking. They had to act fast, and in many respects, they did. There's a scene from Office Space that actually describes Y2K and the debug effort perfectly. A film that's actually from that era and came out before the year 2000. An adult comedy unintentionally serves as a valuable primary source for studying Y2K.
I sit in a cubicle, and I update bank software for the 2000 switch. To save space, they use 2 digits for the date instead of 4, so like 98 instead of 1998. So I go through these thousands of lines of code, and it doesn't really matter.
But keep in mind just how last minute all of this was. Back in 1958, people mostly disregarded the warning proposed by Bemer, both due to distance in time and constantly changing technology. 2000 was still 42 years away. We had some time to worry about it. But as humanity continued putting it off and procrastinating on fixing the problem, the date continued to come closer, and Y2K was presenting itself as more of a bigger threat every day. But people in 1958 assumed that 40 years from now, the old computers would have been upgraded by then to acknowledge and fix that problem. Except in many cases, that was not true. Lots of companies who didn't feel the need to put all this effort and money into upgrading their machines just stuck with the old technology. As you can clearly see, there's a bit of a contradiction here. People believe that in the future, all the computers and their software would be updated to fix these problems by then. But at the same time, a lot of these companies had no reason to upgrade because the 30-year-old machines still worked. People just didn't know what to do with all this technology that was continuously advancing at an unprecedented rate. And this was apparent with the general public's perception of Y2K as well. People constantly had to adapt to new things and ideas, to the point where change became almost routine. Oh, a devastating bug is about to end the world? Might as well prepare for the worst. It is very easy to underestimate just how much technology changed during the 20th century. We went from the horse and buggy to the Hubble Space Telescope in one lifetime. Jeanne Galma, who met Vincent van Gogh when she was a teenager and was almost in her 40s when the Titanic sank, lived long enough to use Netscape Navigator and see Jerry Maguire in theaters. Technology changes a lot in 100 years. And that can be intimidating. The personal computer being used by the masses was still a new concept, meaning that a lot of these people didn't really understand it, or really care to understand it. The general public wasn't putting effort into learning about the technical details behind the Y2K bug. They were just living their normal lives, watching the TV and reading the paper and reading on the internet what the media was telling them. And that was the key component which really brought the Y2K panic to its extreme. Consequently, in the 90s, you had the rise of fake news.
Yep.
This
Fake
is not
news
to
in
say that
96
Y2K was some fabricated and convoluted hoax, because it wasn't, but it was embellished. Consider the amount of money countries spent on updating software to be Y2K proof. The United States spent so much money on Y2K remediation, whereas Italy spent very little, but both countries experienced roughly the same level of Y2K problems. But this doesn't take into account what Italy spent on government departments and business testing, which could have been in the billions. So yes, Y2K was serious and could have caused some significant problems if not catered to. But end of the world serious? Probably not. But this didn't stop the news from telling people that airplanes were going to fall out of the sky and that a worldwide famine would occur.
Airplanes and trains may come to a halt.
The 90s were essentially a transitioning point between having to believe everything you hear on the news because, well, it's all you have, and anyone being able to write the news. In the 60s, when television was still new, you mainly had people like Walter Cronkite, just sitting in front of a camera, stating the news, stating the facts, and you had newspapers. The only information you could really get was from corporate companies who specialized in research and accuracy. In the 90s, you had the internet. More news, more information. You can thank the personal computer for this. An explosion of easily accessible information, and more people being able to share their opinions through blogs, online journals, etc. With the internet, everyone had equal representation, including the reputable, and maybe some of the more unconventional. People could post whatever they wanted and gain popularity from it, even if they were lying. This was the case with Y2K. You now had a ton of misleading tabloids and news coverage about how the apocalypse was on its way, preying on generations of people who were still used to the old ways of retrieving information. It was the perfect recipe for disaster.
3, 2, 1, happy 2000!
And to many people's surprise, on January 1st, obviously nothing dangerous happened. And people, shortly after, began to take note of the sensationalism that had just occurred. Christian author Cole Stringer put it eloquently that many preachers who took advantage of people's feelings during the Y2K scare never apologized for their scaremongering tactics. The same could be applied to the media. The United States would end up spending roughly $100 billion on the Y2K repair bill, designed to combat any glitches related to the 2000 switch. Regardless of how severe things could have been, Y2K was not fake, it was avoided. But because computer glitches are often so unpredictable and can yield different results depending on the setup, there is theoretically no way of knowing just how much damage Y2K could have caused. Whether or not the United States would have been okay without the Y2K repair bill will always be speculation. But despite all the fear-mongering Y2K created, there was some good that came out of it. It essentially forced thousands of computers to upgrade to the latest and greatest software, something that likely wouldn't have happened for a long time had a glitch like it not present itself. It not only prepared people to be more critical of the things they are told, but it also taught them to consistently adapt to an ever-changing world. So thank you, Y2K, for finally taking us to the future that we always wanted. Thank you so
Kaya dun like, so what can I mean, okay, so sa part na, I think pwede naman din magamit kung mami-mitigate yung Y238 bug. Siguro yung dalawa na yun, like yung memory na na hanggang 4 gig lang talaga and stuff, I think you guys gonna need to migrate to 64-bit already. Which is, I bet na some of you na nanonood sa sa smartphone or sa PC na ay you're already did it. I think hindi mo naman kailangan bumili ng gas talaga. And nakita niyo na about sa sa the whole situation about it. So, yeah. And siguro, I mean, most of my mga kliyente na gusto kong ayusin ng PC is dapat na talaga 64-bit. So, yeah. Lipat tayo sa just chatting. Well, actually, that's it para lang sa ngayon. I know this is obviously some quick live stream or something. I haven't think about it tungkol sa sa situation na yan. It's pero all I can learn is lahat tayo gumagamit ng web browser. I don't know, Google Chrome and some stuff with exception to retro game PC is to just migrate to 64-bit. You have no problem na gagamit like and like nga talaga. I even me like I mean this is tong YouTube channel na ito, it's just a experimentation or something. I mean this is literally my sabihin na lang natin second or like other channels next to that Doggo VTuber talking about so yeah, that's it for now, and I just want to eat breakfast and kwento tayo sana. Ewan ko lang kung bye bye.
If you ain't got my money or my bird, I'm killing you and